So here we are at one of the breaks that, as you can tell, like got ripped down and over to the side. This was fresh when I found it, and I found multiple ones creating a trail through the vegetation. And since I feel like I didn't explain this thoroughly enough in the documentary, I'm hoping that this will help shed some light on it. Now, there are more breaks like this going this way, further into the vegetation over here. And I initially dismissed this because, look, right, like it's big enough a person could do. I mean, it's still going to be hard, but a person could definitely do that. But I decided to follow it anyway because I thought it was weird that someone was doing this. I assumed someone was doing it as a marker to go to like their like shelter or some hideout they had around here initially. And so I followed it. So I think the way it works is they try to open it like this to expose the most of the bark inside, because that stays wider, longer on this type of tree, which I think is either willow, yeah. I'm not positive, but whatever it is, it looks like it's most desirable. So let's just kind of go up the area across the trail where it came from. And the reason I dismissed it is because there's a lot of people that go on these trails regularly, so I assumed it's a person. But here we come to another one, and it's pointing this way. So, I just continued following it, seeing where it might lead. And you come across another fresh break. Again, right, these are old. I'm retracing my steps that led me to this discovery. So I keep following it, kind of in the direction it's going, to see if it leads me anywhere, because clearly it has like some purpose. And they're much easier to see because they're all fresh. So here you have another one that got broken. And I hope you're starting to see a pattern here now. And so I continue following it. And of course we do have like an animal trail right here, a deer trail. And then this is where it turned. And this is where it continued all the way further in to the nest sites I would find later. But what's interesting is at the time it was really hard to get through all this because it was a new path. But then later, months later, when I went through here again, it was a lot easier to navigate through because there was a lot more room as if something was using it. And of course, this trail here will eventually break off, fork, and lead further down this way to the area I was getting pebbles thrown at us from. And I'll show you that here a little later. But before we do that, I want to show you kind of how like they interact and interweave with different, almost like different paths. And a lot of the times they'll go through like the vegetation over here. Like this is a lot more vegetation than this. And I'm not gonna go through it, but I want to make a point. So you see that here? So you're gonna get the most cover and concealment going through this area right here. But we're not doing it. So just assume that that's the path that's being taken, because it directly links up to other quite intriguing, similar breaks, forging a path. So over here, we start getting to the trail again as it switches back up here. And here you can see a scrub oak. And this is a newer path than the original one that was done later. like a few weeks later from the original one. And what's interesting is that I'm just assuming here, I think this new break was created to do more of a beeline right over to get to where we were, to get pebbles pelted at us and interactions. So across this trail up here, there was evidence before of these like a small little like nest almost of the bigger ones. And this whole area here at the base had been cleared like this. So I threw him back on there hoping it would repeat itself, but it didn't. But regardless of that, right over there is that break I just showed you. So kind of following like a straight line, and I'm just showing you the fresh ones that I came across initially, that are much harder to find now because they're dead. They're not just freshly broken. Let's see if I can find it. All right, here we go. So as you can see, here's another one that was actually broken all over the place. Like I felt this was kind of I don't know its purpose, obviously, like I have my assumptions, because it just broke a whole bunch. But normally when it's broken a whole bunch, what I've seen before, is that this is a boundary marker. So this was a new boundary marker created about maybe 2 weeks in. I had to check my notes. But it broke this area too. Like it just broke the whole thing. So, continuing on, I hope this is painting a picture. And as you can see, you know, people do come here. Like there are people that come through this area. And remember, the trail is right next to us. But I'm still hidden here. Like there have been people walking around this whole time, and they're not even noticing me. I've been pretty loud, you know, talking to you guys and meandering around. But anyway, so here's another break, and these were all like fresh, like made from one day to the next. Like I followed them, and I'm thankful I didn't run into them, like get too close. But anyway, I'm gonna show you where this one leads. It goes right through the dense brush and vegetation that I don't want to go through. So, right here. Do you see that? So I'm hoping this real-time experience is helping you guys out. And that goes, you know, further down into this area where a lot of the nest sites have been found. And there's just multiple areas where, like, you see these breaks. And obviously, like I said, right, these breaks are old. Now that we've established, and hopefully I've been able to illustrate to make it more clear how the breaks were found, and you've been able to see it for yourself in real time. Then we're going to look at a break trail, the one that made me put the connections together. And we're basically going to it from the main stick break trail. And this is another one that formed overnight. But what's important about this one is that that we got the pebble throws from the location where this leads to. And so we're kind of going the back way. I'm going to point that out when we get there. So as you can see, we have like this X right here, but those were just fresh breaks. The whole thing broken here, up there too, pretty high. And it leads pretty much straight to the spot where the pebbles are being thrown from and more. Here are some bones in this area from a deer. Here are some experiments that there wasn't enough evidence, or it wasn't compelling enough to say yay or nay on what did it. But anyway, right here, this is a newer one. And obviously by newer, it's still pretty old, but it went down into more stick breaks this way when I presume the juvenile was getting more bold and creating routes closer to the Jeep, which was in this area right here. But before that, the breaks went over here. Here you can see an experiment. Nothing that I'm aware of came of it. You can see when the stick's broken, so this is starting to become like a clear path. I don't know if you can see it right there, but that is a bunch of stick breaks at probably 7.5 feet high. Right here there are more stick breaks leading up to where the pebbles are being thrown from. And most exciting is right here, where all these breaks were created. I mean, I know it may not look that far of a distance, but to throw a small pebble that far, and like these pebbles, right, as far as our guesstimates, based on like scientific-ish experiments, where if I can find one. So this isn't a pebble or anything, but it's probably maybe smaller than this. So I'm doing a terrible job of finding pebbles. Over here is a little experiment I carried out for the 2 days I had the audio recorder out. We didn't get pebble throws, but something was definitely hitting pebbles at the recorder, and you can hear it amongst all the wind. All right, I want to point something out. This right here, this is from snow load. And the reason I know this is because I was here the day after it happened. And this happened more recently. This happened last year during the at the end of winter and spring. So I get like why a lot of them look like they could potentially like snow load. And like I'm saying, if I was there to observe the climate, the situation when it occurred, I tend to agree with you. But because I was there and able to monitor the environment every single day after the initial pebble throw started, and pretty much every other day beforehand, I was able to differentiate between these breaks that were happening versus something that might be more natural, like this right here. I was seeing this in real time, you know, from one night to the next day when inspecting the area. These new breaks had formed, creating trails or markers through this dense brush and vegetation. And I even tried to play devil's advocate, right? I'd be like, well, maybe the bear came out of hibernation early when this occurred, because it was at the end of winter. But there's nothing on the trees that were being broken. You know, there's no incentive for them to go to break these trees down trying to grab something. So that's what was peculiar to me. And you know, of course, there's probably a lot of breaks in here later in the year, because I can tell you one thing: when the apples started, there were a lot of breaks that I just dismissed because they were apple trees, and I just assumed it was the bears doing it. So there's definitely a lot of different animals that come through here, And so it's hard, especially later in the season, to know what what did what. So what became even more compelling with these stick breaks was that I started seeing breaks that were fresh that a person couldn't possibly do. And again, connecting to these trails and other spots with the nest sites and the potential blinds and stuff like that. So right up here is an example of one that's far too big and high for me to do, or anyone for that matter. Though I still do wonder, what is the difference between the big ones and then all the small ones? That I mean, it would still be hard for a person to break, but it's definitely within human range. But why is it that in some areas they're large and up high connecting, but in other areas they're more discreet? And I have different ideas, like one is to be more discreet because a lot of the times they're crossing nearby, where people travel near near trails and paths and stuff. Another thought was maybe it was one of the younger ones, playing around, improvising and doing what the adults do. But whatever the reason, it's very like subtle and low key. But that's also the perfect strategy for why we just dismiss it. Because, like I said, right, I dismissed it originally, and it occurred maybe a week or two before the pebbles started getting tossed. Before I started before I started taking it more seriously, because of all the breaks that led right up to where the pebbles are being thrown from. But they're clearly there. They're clearly manipulated by an intelligent force for a purpose. At this point, I think it's less about arguing if it's natural phenomena or not, and it's more about arguing whether people did it versus this hominid, because it's very clear that it was done intentionally. Like a lot of them have twists, like you saw it. A lot of them go like looped around a branch and kind of stick to a side. There's a lot more to learn from them, and I've just barely scratched the surface. But what it has shown, I think, is that around people in populated areas, they have a system in place to follow these trails that will cover and conceal, so will hide them from people. They're all placed in perfect spots so that people cannot see them from the trail or anywhere, the way they navigate and weave through. And they're closer to one another in areas close to the trail, and then become more sparse the further away you get from people, which I think shows that when they don't have fear of human detection, then they can be more liberal, and they can be more complacent. And that's why it's not as important to leave a trail through the most important places to go to stay safest and hidden best. Okay, so besides the nest sites, I've been able to find like a place like this where something large looks like it's been laying down behind this tree. And once again, like we're close to the blind, or close to all the stick breaks intersect here, and there's our other like little nest sites on the other side of this tree, which I showed in the documentary. Now, what's interesting is this is where I found those hair samples that I know I keep talking about, but I really want someone that knows what they're doing in looking at hair to look at it underneath a microscope. Just to give you like a little spoiler, when I look at it under the microscope, I don't see any medulla whatsoever. It doesn't look like anything I can see online to cross-reference, and it's interesting. Like it goes from like white, like gray hair, to black. So I think it's from an older, North American hominid. But this is an area where I've also found these hair samples.